All right, good morning, everyone. So great to have you here in today's FIU and DC Talent Lab event, DC and the Law. My name is Eric Feldman. I'm the Associate Director of FIU in Washington, DC. It's a pleasure to introduce today's event. For those of you who may not be as familiar with FIU in DC, we advocate for the university's research priorities and students here in the Capitol through governmental relations work, through idea exchange events with think tank and federal officials on pressing national issues, as well as host our talent lab, which is what you are experiencing today, our suite of support services for students and alumni. The Talent Lab consists of Impact a series events just like this one today with 3 amazing law student alumni from FIU undergraduate programs, as well as interns. We have, even amid the current situation, just under 40 interns in working with DC-based organizations this summer, and mostly virtually. We're launching our new Hamilton Scholars Academic Semester program in the fall with additional scholarship support and a course that our today's moderator, Anthony Rianda, has been working hard on for a group of students, and regular fly-in seminars where students spend 3 days in DC exploring different topics. And again, those are going virtually as well. So we're glad to have you know a little bit more about the Talent Lab. Some internships and events that happen to be upcoming with our partners that I'd love to quickly mention, and I'll paste links for all of this in the chat. FIU is a sponsor of a weekly series featuring members of Congress with our partners at the Florida House on Capitol Hill. Thursday's event, I think that's tomorrow, if I have any idea what day it is, at 8 o'clock in the morning, features Congressman Charlie Crist, and you can RSVP for that via email and join that and ask questions directly to him. They're not pre-moderated or through his staffers. And we also have 2 FIU alumni on this panel hosted by the Congressional Hispanic Leadership Institute, Keith and Javier, both FIU alumni. Alex on Facebook is also from Miami. I'll post links for all of these in the chat in a moment. Also some upcoming internships all over the political spectrum, from far left to libertarian and everything in between. Leadership Conference on Human and Civil Rights, National Security Action, Charles Koch Institute, and our South Florida Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart all currently have internships posted. Some of them are due this week, some of them are due in a few weeks. I encourage you to check out the links I posted in the chat. And if you're an FIU student, because I know we have some valued external guests in the chat here today, feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat for any support with these applications. So without further ado, I'll proceed to introducing today's panel. First, Orga Cadet is an associate with the law firm Baker and Hostetler LLP, where his practice involves walking clients through complex national security issues in the context of international trade. This includes sanctions, federal government reviews of foreign companies or governments' attempts to buy US companies, and the protection of technology that has or could have military uses. Prior to his transition to the law firm setting, he was an attorney for the U.S. Department of Commerce's Office of the Chief Counsel for Trade Enforcement and Compliance. And Zoom kind of has this text that I can't edit that tells people to send me questions when I send out the event registration. So somebody already wrote in Orga asking about that transition from federal government to private. So I'm sure that'll come up as we talk. His FIU bachelor's degree is in finance, and his law degree is from Georgetown University. He also has a master's in public policy from Harvard University. Charlene Goldfield is an attorney advisor at the Federal Communications Commission, where she currently works on national security and supply chain issues. She also was a team lead on matters related to the $200 million COVID-19 telehealth program, which was appropriated through the recent CARES Act. Her federal government experience also extends to her previous position at the U.S. Department of Justice, where she handled Freedom of Information Act requests, and in the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. Her FIU degree is in political science and journalism, as well as a master's in higher education administration. Her law degree is from American universities, Washington College of Law, and she's currently pursuing her LLM in cybersecurity and national security here at George Washington University Law School, because learning never ends. And actually, Charlene, is your fellow panelist next door to you still? You want to introduce Luke really quick?
Yes, if by any chance my fellow coworker here, my dog, interrupts, his name is Luke, please don't mind him. So.
And finally, Michael Jimenez is corporate counsel at WorldAware, a risk management tech company delivering intelligence and technology to government, intergovernmental, and multinational corporate clients. WorldAware's services enable clients to prepare for, monitor, and respond to threats that could impact their people or operations across the world. His role here and at his previous employer, Combined Insurance, a Chubb company, has included drafting and negotiating client contracts and disputes worldwide, conducting international audits, conducting internal investigations, developing a compliance program for social media, and leading on privacy and data security matters. His FIU degree is in international relations with a certificate in national security studies, and his law degree is from Chicago-Kent College of Law at Illinois Institute of Technology. So I'm very excited about this panel because you see they all have very different careers, in-house counsel, law firm, federal government, but also have some neat interlapping themes of national security and technology. For example, finally, moderating this panel after I get out of the way is my colleague, Anthony Rianda. Anthony is a director in FIU's Office of Governmental Relations, so he's my colleague in that unit. He also, in addition to previously working for FIU's College of Law, is a FIU College of Law student himself, so I thought he'd be great to lead this conversation. As we get going, I encourage everyone else who's in here today to take a moment in the chat and introduce yourself, your FIU affiliation if you have any, or what affiliation you have if you're a guest, and what drew you to this topic today. Also, feel free to ask questions in the chat at any time. We'll be keeping an eye on the questions in the chat, and I'll make sure that Anthony or myself call on you to ask questions via video, or if they're related questions, maybe combine a couple of those into one question that we asked, including if you've emailed me a question earlier today and you want to ask that in the chat, you're more than welcome to do so. So Anthony, take it over from here, and anything you would like to say about your current experience with FIU law and legal studies yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Eric, and thanks everyone for joining us today. Just really briefly, it's an honor to be here. Just before the chat started, we were talking about our own FIU experiences, and I think that's part of what this is, so you get to learn from alums. I'm very happy. I spent the last decade basically at the FIU Law School as a student or employee, and I know that sometimes we get isolated into just the people from one program, but FIU's got 50 years of making lawyers that went to different institutions around the country, and it's a strong alumni network, and we have to tap into it for all of you. And I know some of the students who are on here who are going to law school in the fall, some at Georgetown and at FIU and others, so welcome. But first, let me just start with a basic question, and if we want to start, maybe Charlene can go first, and then Orga, and then Michael. Tell us a little bit about your path. How did you get to where you're at? I mean, you were at the DOJ or at Commerce or at Chubb, big company. And how did you get to DC? How did you make that decision to go to law school? How did you make the decision to, move away, get back, and how did you end up in DC? So we want to also emphasize the different career paths here. I went to law school obviously a lot later than everybody else. That's common. So maybe we can include your own journey. So Charlene?
Sure. Thank you, Anthony. So I always knew I wanted to go to law school. I just wasn't sure where. I grew up in Miami. I went to school in Miami. And so I had a feeling that my next step would be out of Miami. I did a internship when I was an undergrad with a small publication here in DC. Because I was a journalism major at the time with a focus on political science. I wanted to do political reporting. And it opened my eyes to actually enjoying DC. I really liked the atmosphere. I liked the fact that everything that happens is here. Like Hamilton, if you guys are fans of it, like it's like where it happens, like the room where it happens. So I knew that I wanted to be in this community. And so I said to myself one day, I'm going to get here. It took me a while to get here. I tried to find jobs in the meanwhile because I did go to law school later. I didn't go straight out of college. I took some time. I worked. I did my master's for a little bit because I thought I was going to go in one direction with my law degree somehow, kind of doing in-counsel for universities. That changed when I went to law school. So eventually I ended up here in DC. I, saved some money up because I knew that this is where I was going to come to. And I really enjoyed it. I think that, going to American was great. It was like an extension of being in Miami, just because there are a lot of people from Miami, Florida, believe it or not, that go to American and just other DC law schools. And it was also a very diverse community. I never felt like an outsider at American. I felt like I was supported by all my professors. So it was a great experience for me. And so after that, I clerked because I knew that I kind of wanted more experience, more background in the law and actually how it works, and sort of seeing if maybe litigating would be my thing. So I clerked in a district court for Montgomery County in Maryland, and I enjoyed it. I clerked for 12 judges. It was the lower court in Maryland, and it was a lot of things that I learned. My judges were fantastic. One of my judges is here today, Judge Williams. He's a great advocate for interns and for minority students, especially those who are aspiring to be lawyers. And so that was fantastic, an experience for me. And then eventually I clerked again for DC Superior because it was more of a different setting. As you know, DC, their trial court is just Superior Court. And then after that, you go to appeals. So it was very fantastic experience for me there too. And I learned a lot from my judge there. And, eventually I made it to the federal government because I kind of knew that I always wanted to go into public interest and kind of like government experience. And eventually maybe if I'll think about going into private, I'm not sure yet, but that's kind of where my path has led me to, has been always public interest. And my interest in national security and cyber kind of developed last semester of law school, actually, when I took a class, because at the time, privacy and cyber wasn't so predominant as it, especially in classes. It was up and rising, but it wasn't so offered in my law school. And so I eventually had to kind of learn a little bit along the way and get involved outside and kind of get to know people. So there you go.
Thank you, and welcome Judge Williams, and I think one of his colleagues, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Thank you.
Orga, would you like to tell us a bit about your path?
Sure. Thank you so much, Eric and Anthony, for organizing this. So I was also born and raised in Miami, and loved going to college in Miami, but also had a sense that I wanted to leave Miami for something else after graduating. And I remember in undergrad becoming very, very interested in all sorts of public policy issues, both domestic and internationally. And at the time I was majoring in finance and enjoying it. But I knew that I really wanted to get a sense of the law to understand what the sort of social underpinnings are. And I should also say that the straw that broke the camel's back was a summer internship where I spent 4 months doing pivot tables and Excel algorithms, and I'm sure that didn't help a whole lot for my budding finance career at the time. But I think I made a great choice. I remember the application process being tough. So if there's anyone out there who's going through that process now and or about to, just know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I did a power score course, and I thought that was very helpful, but there are so many other courses out there that are also very, very strong. But once I made it to DC, I knew that this was the best place for me. Since coming here, my life has gone in so many different directions. I've lived and worked and studied in Lebanon and Turkey and Syria, and traveled to so many other places as well. But all roads ended up going right back to DC. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it here. And yeah, I think I made a great choice.
Great, thank you. And you're a large firm, so that's an interesting thing you can elaborate in the next questions too, but comparing it to government. And Michael, if you want to introduce us to your path and how you got to DC.
Sure. So everyone, hi, I'm Michael. I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. In high school, I did something called team court. I'm from Central Florida. and born and raised. And I really enjoyed my experience working in a courtroom and seeing legal process. In undergrad, I was international relations, national security studies. I would definitely recommend, a little bit off topic, but studying abroad if you can in undergrad or law school. I did both. And I even done I forget the name of the institute, but the Public Policy Institute at FIU. I received a critical language scholarship to study in Russia. And so those are really fun experiences. As far as law school, I knew that I wanted to either do a master's or PhD in international relations, or I wanted to go into law. And so it was a big trying to decide between those two areas that have very different career paths. And so after undergrad, I decided I should work at a law firm to see if I wanted to actually undertake being a lawyer and going to law school, because it is expensive, it's time consuming, and I know people, and I'm sure the other presenters also know people who've done it and then don't like it at all. So it was, I think, really important to my career development to work at a law firm. I lived in Los Angeles. I worked in a law firm in Beverly Hills doing securities arbitration. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. And after 2 years of doing it, I decided, like, why am I waiting any longer? I could do what these people do. And so I decided to go to law school. I also took a Lsat prep course, and I think that if you do decide to go to law school, you should definitely take an Lsat prep course, because it's an expensive process, but I was able to receive a full scholarship to the university that I went to for law school, based in part on my undergrad record and my LSAT score. I treated law school, I think I didn't really have like a geographic area that I wanted to end up in. I loved California, and I still do love California, but I just decided I would go to the school that gave me the best scholarship. And so that made me move to Chicago. It was a good choice. I really loved law school. And so if you love the law, like, some people hated law school, but I thought it was the most fun experience, because you were able to really get into topics that you don't get to do in undergrad. Whereas undergrad, you're kind of all over the place, and you get to do a lot of fun stuff, but it's not really like focused on one area. Even in, I feel like, my senior year or my fourth year of undergrad. But so anyway, so I went to law school. I worked for a judge one summer. I also did the summer internship in DC in undergrad at the Department of Veterans Affairs, Office of General Counsel. It's really important that you do these kinds of events, because I think, as far as my career path, it's all about who you know, unfortunately. I think, in my experience, it's trying to find doors that will open, and you need to find the people that will open the doors for you. So law school is great for that. Your undergrad network and your law school network are the people that are going to open doors. So, I echo, I think, what the other panelists say, as far as I know what it's like to try to get your foot in the door. I was very lucky that I got my foot in the door at Chubb, which is a large insurance company. I did kind of a back way in where I took a job in compliance. It wasn't a legal role for the first year, but then they realized that I was good at being a lawyer. And so I received a promotion to a counsel position. My trip to DC and my move here was not as, it was more just because my husband needed a job. Like, he was a lawyer too, and he worked at Baker McKenzie, which is a massive law firm in Chicago, and he hated being a lawyer, so be careful. But he decided he wanted to do nonprofits, so he ended up getting a job in DC. So we moved here. I worked in the Chubb office in DC, which was really fun. It was their lobbyists, their federal and international lobbyist office, so that was a cool experience, very DC. But I decided I wanted to go into tech, and so I leveraged the Chubb name basically to get a job at another tech company that is where I am now. So happy to talk about anything. If you have questions, like, obviously, I think all of us, reach out to us. We're happy to help.
So thank you all three for your introductions. Different paths, good for everybody who's on the call to see there's not just one firm set, from whatever the blogs or these books or Instagram say. So on the panel, we've got, you're in your current role, Charlene, you're with the government at the FCC. Orga, you're at private big law firm in Washington, and Michael, you're an in-house counsel. Can you describe your day-to-day, or what drives you? Obviously not breaking any confidentiality or anything, but what maybe cases you've worked on or experiences like the CARES Act, and kind of give our students a preview into what you do. And just noting from the chat, we've got folks from all over the place, law students at Columbia, at FIU, at Georgetown, at GW, our future students. So just keeping the chat going. Maybe Orga, if you want to start.
Sure. So I work on international trade and national security issues, as Eric described earlier. So a lot of my clients have, they produce technology that the U.S. would like to keep within the U.S., or if this technology is exported, at least exported very carefully in a controlled way. So I help them make sure that their programs are set up so that these technologies are always in safe hands. Something else I do is I help ensure that if, say, a Chinese company is buying a U.S. company that makes a sensitive technology, that this potential acquisition goes through a foreign investment review process that is hopefully successful. I also work on sanctions and various other issues, such as government contracts fraud as well. And there is a very big difference between being a lawyer in a law firm and being a lawyer in a government, and also in the nonprofit sector too. I should say, when I first graduated, my first role was in the nonprofit space. I worked for a pro bono law firm as a lawyer on the Syrian peace process, giving legal advice to one side of the negotiators. And then I moved on and I joined the Commerce Department, and I was a lawyer there for about 2 years. No matter where you are as a lawyer, research and writing, those are going to be your core skills. So that doesn't change a whole lot between the sectors. But in the nonprofit space, culturally, I found some of the most passionate people, some of the most driven people. But the downside there is that because it's a nonprofit, there are resource constraints. So it's not as easy to train you or send you to training events and opportunities. But you do get a lot of hands-on experience, which is something you get a lot of in the government as well. You at a very early age, even as a young lawyer, you can be in charge of a very important case. I'm sure Charlene can talk more about that, given the work you've done on the big CARES Act relief package. But in a law firm, you are working a lot of hours. There are a lot more resources available to train you. And one thing I would note as well is that in a government, generally, not always, but generally the roles lawyers are expected to play are somewhat like being a referee. You're expected to help draft laws and apply them as equally and consistently as possible. Whereas in a law firm, the role is generally as a coach. You're helping to coach your client through what is usually a very complicated legal maze, and so those require different skills. But I found that it's very helpful to have both skills. So that makes me feel much more confident in any situation.
Versatility and experience, great experience. Michael, do you want to tell us a bit about your?
Yeah, so I work in-house. I've always worked in-house. I knew that I didn't want to work at a law firm based on working at a law firm. And you have to do billables, you work longer hours. The big difference is that I probably make half of what Orga makes or less. And so that's the big payoff or the big balancing act you have to decide as far as just a big one that is in a lot of people's minds when they are choosing career paths for income. But For me, I work like 9 to 5:36 every day, and I'm done. And I don't have to worry about weekends, nights. Like, this is my job, and this is what I do, and then I go home, or I'm always at home right now. So I enjoyed that, and that was important to me as far as my career path. My day-to-day is a lot of contract negotiation. So when you work in-house for a corporation, typically, there's all kinds of in-house jobs, I should say, but the main driving one as to why we're mostly here is corporations are nothing but a nexus of contracts. Something you'll hear in law school, if you choose to go that path. But we're just contracts. It's like the only reason I work here is because I have a contract with my employer to do this job, and the only reason that we get money is because we have contracts with clients to pay us money, and then we have contracts with vendors to provide us the services to then give to our clients. And so all of those contracts require legal review, and so I'm the one who reviews all of them. And so each in-house experience is going to be different. The one that I was at prior, I did a lot more of compliance type work, even though I wasn't a legal role. So I was more into HR type of things with insurance agents and their social media presence. So what could we as a company tell our employees not to put online? And that was a big problem because we had insurance is a highly regulated space, and any marketing piece of any insurance thing that you see has been vetted by an attorney and is subject to a lot of laws, and they're all state-specific laws. So if you're online and you're an insurance company and you have advertising, it's really difficult to make sure that you're in compliance with 50 states' laws because insurance is a state-based regulatory scheme versus some other ones like securities, which are more federal, but also have state ones, but mostly it's federal. So that was fun and challenging. But as far as what I'm doing now, it's definitely more of a shift to client contracts, and it's been fun because we have offices here in DC. I work in Annapolis, actually. Then we have offices in London, Cape Town, South Africa, and Singapore. And we have clients all around the globe. And I'm the attorney that negotiates with all those clients all around the world. And it's fun from an international relations perspective that I didn't get to do that professionally as like my main job, but I get to do that as a lawyer now, interacting with these people in different legal regimes. And I also deal a lot with data security and data privacy. And so as far as my day job right now, like this week has been a challenging week because last week the European Union invalidated a large law called Privacy Shield, or a large structure for transferring data from the EU to the US. And so as a company, a tech company that like transfers a lot of EU data to the US, we're impacted. And so we're still trying to figure out what the impact to our business will be because of the invalidation of Privacy Shield. But anyway, so it changes every week, but like the main things I deal with are contracts, and then I get to deal with privacy implications and data incidents and that kind of thing on a daily basis, more or less as well.
Not a slow time during COVID. A lot of work from, and Charlene?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the disclaimer that obviously anything I say here doesn't represent anything the government nor my employer, FCC, but it's my personal opinion. So I guess I'll start with the differences. It's definitely very different, as Orga said, than working in the federal government as working with a private law firm. You have many clients versus my client is the United States government. I think it's kind of like being an in-house counsel, only you are limited to the projects that you're doing. And I feel like an in-house counsel, you guys do so much and you're dependent on for so many things. So in the government itself and with my experiences, I've seen like different sides of the things that you have to do. When I was at Department of Justice, it was very, I guess, citizen-based because I did a lot of Freedom of Information Act cases. So a lot of citizens depended on our decisions to kind of get the information they wanted from certain topics in the government that relate to the Department of Justice. And so I did have to interact a lot with callers or people that were asking us, hey, where's this information? I did not go into court. That's one difference in, like certain positions within the government. Of course, if you are an assistant United States attorney, it's different because you are going into court all the time versus myself. Like I am more of an attorney advisor. So we are more in the office than anything. We don't really write as many pleadings, nor do we do a lot of motions or anything like that. Ours is more policy based. In justice, I did write a lot of, I did decisions, but it was more of an appeals decision for citizens with regards to FOIA. And then one of the reasons why, I left there was because even though I thought it was very important and I thought that, I love administrative law, was one of my favorite subjects in law school. I wanted to do a lot more within my area that I really wanted to do, which is just national security and cyber. So that's why I went to the FCC, because right now I'm working on the supply chain issue with Huawei and ZTE, which is, one of the biggest things right now with regards to our communications networks. And so in the FCC, I do a lot more policy writing. I do a lot of rulemaking. If any of you have taken admin law, do a lot of notices of proposed rulemaking, letting people know this is what we're doing. These are our actions. What are your comments? And so, I just started there in March. So I even haven't been in the office since COVID hit. So it's been very interesting on that too. But it's been all telework, but that's basically been one of my biggest projects. With the CARES Act, I was more of the background person. And so one of the bureaus worked on getting that passed through the Hill and actually working on that with Chairman Pai from the FCC. But I was more of the team lead, getting people to actually submit the money to our hospitals all across the country. And so one of our things was not as legal based, but it was definitely something that we needed to do because we needed to make sure that these applications weren't exceeding money limits, weren't being, careless items being purchased, because this is money that was being given from taxpayers to private hospitals or, based on the eligibility that was determined by Congress. So one thing that I will mention is when you are in the government, you do need to realize that once you start in, there is a hierarchy and there is some kind of bureaucracy that goes to it. And I feel like any other job would be the same. You're not going to do right away the things that you really, really want to do, but you work for it and you work hard for it and you sort of prove how dependent you are. You learn those skills like writing, like Orga mentioned, and you become dependable and timeliness, and always make sure that you are adhering to deadlines, and that you're a team player, because a lot of the government work, believe it or not, is dependent upon you being a good team player and actually working well in teams. And a lot of our stigma is that the government is full of people that either are lazy or that they don't want to be there, or they're just 9 to 5 and that's it. But that's not the case. I rarely have come across people that are like that, especially if you're an attorney. I think that they're very dependable and very passionate people that you'll learn and that you'll meet, and they're great, and you get a lot of mentors. I know that FCC is full of great people that I have actually just met a couple months ago, and they're just always calling me to find out how I'm doing and how they can help me sort of acclimate, to be successful. So I think that whatever or hear about the government is not always the case. Some people might have different experiences, and that's totally okay, but I think that it all depends on where you're going. So I just know that one thing I want to mention is that don't get discouraged if you do eventually get a job within the government and you're not doing things right away that you wanted to do, but that's okay, because you're going to learn along the way and you're going to prove yourself. And then once you do prove yourself, it's the doors opening to other great opportunities. So I think it's been fantastic, and it doesn't hurt that if 10 years and then you get your loans forgiven, hopefully. So that's been one of my reasons too, that I think that those resources are there for government work too.
So now, we've talked about work and we've talked about what you do. So I have to ask you the ultimate university alumni question, which is, what's your favorite FIU memory? But I'll add to that. What advice do you wish somebody had given you in the late 2000s when you were at FIU about your career, or to think outside the box? I know Michael already mentioned study abroad, and Orga's mentioned travel. you know, that's obviously limited by COVID and impacting a lot of the students' plans. But, you know, what do you wish? To diversifying your knowledge or all that? But maybe, Charlene, you want to start off?
Sure, yeah. So I guess my favorite moment in FIU was definitely being involved. You know, within my organizations, I was heavily involved in Greek life and campus life. And so I think I got a support network through that avenue, just because you know, everyone from high school I knew had gone off and I stayed back in Miami. So but one thing that I definitely feel that I would have loved to have gotten feedback from was actually taking advantage of all like the great speakers, lectures, these type of programs. Like, you know, FIU and DC didn't exist back then. But like I see all the great things that FIU is doing now for pre-law and just government and DC work. And I would just say, like, take advantage of all that. I wish I would have taken more advantage of what was available at the time, and been able to kind of participate in more of those things. Sometimes imposter syndrome takes over, especially if you're a minority student. And so like, you definitely have to get rid of that. You have to go for the things because you're not going to know if it's a yes or no unless you go for it. So I think like those are one of the things that I would definitely emphasize, is that you please take advantage of all these great things, because I know I would have definitely done that if I was still a student at FIU.
And not to interject, but can you explain the imposter syndrome thing a little bit? I think that's such an important point, and maybe everybody can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's in my mind because I was talking with my colleagues the other day about this. So, you know, imposter syndrome is definitely, anyone can experience that, right? You know, whatever ethnicity, minority, or anything like that, I feel like it can be innate in anybody and any human being. However, I feel that, you know, as someone, you know, who's first generation college student, first generation law student, like, you tend to think that, you know, do I belong here? Like, it's just like one of those like little like voices inside back of your head, that if you're in a group full of all males and you're the only female, especially in national security, you know, arena, a lot of them are males, military, it's very bravado. And sometimes in the back of your mind, you're like, do I even fit in here? Like, do I even know what I'm talking about? Am I qualified for this job? Even when you're applying for a job, you know, mostly, you know, females feel like, you know, can I handle this? Will I be able to do this? And you don't even know you're doing it or thinking that until you actually like look back and you're like, why didn't I apply for this? You know, and so it's always like that little voice in the back of your mind, or at least that's how I define it. Many people there may define it in other ways, but I think like that's been something that I've kind of, as you get older, you kind of like slowly phase into, and you're like, why am I saying or thinking this way?
Thank you, and thanks for the on-the-fly additional question. Michael, do you want to talk a bit about your FIU memories and something you wish, and maybe even comment on the imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so FIU was great. I think my favorite thing about FIU was there is so much there that you can take advantage of. I think, you know, I think the other two talked about this, but you just have to be the one to take advantage of it. You know, I feel like high school was a little bit more, if you're lucky enough to have your parents kind of push you, or you have like maybe a teacher or a coach or something, someone will like kind of push you to where you need to go. When you get to college, like, it's your opportunity to take advantage of what you want to take advantage of, and no one's going to be there to tell you to do it. So FIU I thought was great. I was in the honors college. I studied abroad. But I remember like for example, studying abroad, I had to look that up, and I had to go to this guy's office and find that there's this program called like the National Student Exchange Program, and that through the National Student Exchange Program, I could go to Canada, which is where I went, Northwestern Canada, and and I still got all my scholarships, and I actually like paid less, because rent in the middle of nowhere, you know, Canada is different than Miami, and so I think that the best thing was just the amount of opportunities that I had. I think also like engaging with professors that are, I found at FIU there were a lot of professors who were happy to engage and wanted to engage with students that were actually interested in the topics that they're teaching, because you know, FIU, we're not, you know, UF necessarily, or you know, Georgetown or Ivy League. So there's a lot of different kinds of students. And so it's up to you to differentiate yourself within all those students. And some of those students aren't going to do well maybe, or aren't really interested in being there. They just feel like they have to go there because their parents told them they have to go to college. But if you really want to be there and you really want to dig in on topics, your professors are like happy to find you and to find opportunities for you. So I would engage with your professors as much as you can. Let's see, what was it? Is there another part of the question? What was after that?
But what advice would you wish somebody gave you? So I mean, I think you could tackle.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that's good. And then also, I think of undergrad. I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, and so I apologize if I'm kind of beating that dead horse. But like, it's university is also kind of a business thing, and so it is your opportunity to maximize what you can do to, if you want to go to law school, to get to a better law school, to get a better scholarship, to get a better job. So you have every summer, and you have potentially time during the year to make that happen. So load that with as much as you can, as you feel comfortable and that you're able to, without maybe having to get a job you must get to survive. But if you can, try to find internships. Every internship that I got was what got me into my next role. And so it kind of eventually, when you start out, like my first job was at McDonald's. Like, what are you going to do with that? You can't really do much with that, but it's still like, oh, I worked really hard and I did night shift and whatever. And so that gets you your next one. So try to, max out all of the opportunities that you have on your resume if you want to be a lawyer, especially because law school is like next level. Everyone there is really smart. Everyone there really wants to be there. Everyone there did really well in undergrad. And so if you can find a way to differentiate yourself from other people before you get there, then that will help you with internships and jobs after law school.
Awesome. And Orga, if you.
Sure. Yeah, my favorite memory of FIU's, I would probably say, is when we won our first football championship in 2010. That was a great moment. But I have so many other moments. Just hanging out in GC was great. The palm trees. I had the chance to visit last year, and I even missed all the ducks on campus. I never thought I would miss them necessarily, but I think FIU just kind of seems like at the time, but also in hindsight, just sort of like going to college in paradise, and I love that. But I also love the events. I remember seeing the Israeli ambassador speak on campus. There's so many other events like that, and the organizations. I was very involved in Delta Sigma Pi, the business fraternity, and so I love that. So many class options as well. So a lot of very positive memories from FIU for sure. I'm really happy that Charlene brought up imposter syndrome, because I think that's I definitely had to deal with that as a first generation college grad, first generation law student, and I think what FIU excels at is diversity. I never felt extremely out of place at FIU. That it seemed like, to the extent that I looked different from a lot of other people, I think a lot of other people looked different from me, and FIU is kind of a melting pot in that way. But to go from FIU to the legal industry in DC, there's definitely sort of a culture shock there. And so tying this to Michael's point about how much effort it takes sometimes to like figure out where the opportunities are, meeting people. My advice to FIU law students or pre-law students interested in law is to not let that stop you, the imposter syndrome or anything else, and to go out, find people you'd like to learn from, start up those relationships, and maintain old relationships as well. Because as we've said several times during this panel, there is something about DC where, for better or worse, those connections will have a huge impact on your career. So one final thing I would say is that if someone isn't sure what their practice area, what they'd like to practice in law, I would say don't worry about that too much. A lot of us have been there. when I first started law school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. At one point, I wanted to be a space lawyer. That was kind of a good 6 months or year of my life. And then I had an internship with the UN, working on the Syrian war from Beirut. And from then, I just like fell in love with international law and national security, international security issues. And actually, right now, some of my clients are in the space industry. Some of my clients are space startups who are producing rockets, and they need to be very careful about that because some of that technology is very similar to missile technology. So I would say just kind of hang in there, learn as much as you can, meet as many people as you can, and you'll be moving in the right direction.
Cool. I mean, it's fascinating for me to hear this. I'm on a campus every day with so many students, and they all want to do what you're all doing, following your passion. And obviously, there's no direct path to get to your goals, but you've all kind of maneuvered it, come full circle. So thank you for that. And imposter syndrome for students who stayed in Miami, who left from Miami, is such a big topic. And confronting that fear, that challenge that we all have to, we didn't do it the way that the book says. We didn't follow the step-by-step program. We did it our own way. And I think that's what FIU is good at, helping push folks to find your own path or make your own path. So we have some great questions, and we have just about 10 minutes for them. So the first one is, I'm just going to combine a few of them, is about adaptability, adapting to remote court proceedings, adapting to EU-US relations in cybersecurity and privacy laws, specifically that Michael mentioned, and adaptability to your changing career goals, right? And to getting from what Charlene mentioned about your supervisors, you're going to be at the bottom of the totem pole for a little bit. You're going to have to intern. You're going to have to maybe take something, unfortunately, that's unpaid, but that'll give you some great experience. So if we can very broadly address those questions, and maybe Michael can start with the EU-US adapting to changing laws, and then maybe Charlene and Orga.
Yeah, sure. So adaptability in all areas of your life. And I think even if you choose not to do law is huge to be successful. The US-EU stuff, it's really fun. The EU is, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, then you should look up Max Schrems. And he's this Austrian activist who kind of single-handedly brought down like everything that the US and the EU is trying to do to ensure that our companies and our can continue doing business across transatlantic. And he's just trying to undo it, basically. And he's been very successful. And so it's really interesting, though, just to read his story and to read what he's trying to do. It's all around Facebook and Facebook data and transferring it. And there's the 2 US laws that have been involved are called FISA, and then there's an executive order as well that the Court of Justice of the EU, the CJEU, put out. But there's a lot out there, so by all means, like, please look into it. But adaptability is key. This is kind of, I was thinking about when we were talking about imposter syndrome. One thing that I noticed, and I think it's definitely true in companies in the US, and I'm sure it's in other areas where Orga and Charlene are, but you're going to come across a lot of white straight males. And they're going to be not just white straight males, but like ones that like belong to country clubs and like grew up doing lots of different things that maybe you didn't do. And trying to find relatability is hard when you're not of the same mold as a lot of the other people that are around you, and it can be frustrating. I remember an attorney that I worked with who was a great friend of mine, but John Joseph Allen, and he just innately got these people, and like we'd be in the same room, and he would just connect in a way that I was like, I don't know how he's doing that. Like, but you got to stay true to yourself. Your hard work will pay off, and adaptability doesn't mean adapting who you are. So still be who you are, but let your work show. But otherwise, adapt to everything else.
Some great advice. Charlene.
Yeah. So, Michael, you brought up a good point that yes, there is a lot of the white straight males, country club, you know, especially if you clerk, like a lot of judges might be from that kind of mold. Not all of them are. And so, and especially myself, I experienced so many judges from different, you know, areas and landscapes because I did work for 12 of them at one point. So like, you just have to, you know, I didn't know anything about that. Like I didn't even know, you know, like anything about golf really. But they talk a lot about golf. So, you know, like it's just kind of being, I feel like I've always been true to myself and I'll never change for anybody. And, you know, even when you go to networking events, like, even though that's like the dreaded word, like, you know, you go and you meet people, you know, like it's just, you don't have to fake your, you know, who you are. And if people don't like for who you are, then that's okay. Like it's fine. Like I've met a lot of people along the way that have kind of given me this like atmosphere or like energy that they just don't like the way I am. And, you know, like, so that's fine. And I just kind of you have to like pick yourself up and keep going. But as far as like adaptability to careers, like I know for a fact, like I am a big proponent of not giving up on what you want to do, because I've had a lot of no's throughout my career. And from all the no's, you get those yeses that mean something. And so, you know, right now, like I know there's just so much uncertainty with, you know, everything going on with COVID, but it's going to be okay. And I think I've talked to a lot of students that are graduating now from law school, and they're just like freaking out about what they're going to do because either they had clerkships, not clerkships, but you know, like private firm jobs that probably are not going to happen, or, you know, something along the way, but that's okay. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of need out there for other areas that you could probably do well in that can transfer later to other jobs, like working as a public defender, or working, you know, in, or clerking for smaller courts, or, you know, just those type of things. There's a lot of need. And I think that right now, a lot of people out there need attorneys. And so those type of skills you can never, you know, replace. Like they're just so charitable. And so like if you are, you know, litigating or providing that kind of support, even pro bono, I think that's very great, because I do some pro bono just because like I need to do something to help in some way, because that's what I became an attorney for.
And thanks, Charlene. And Orga?
Sure. I'll talk a bit about the adaptability from the like the legal and regulatory perspective. Yeah, I think understanding the law as a flexible construct is important, because so many changes are happening right now, and I think it's exciting for everyone who's in law school now or going into law school to think about just the scale and the pace of change with respect to you name it, climate change or technology or international relations. So many of these things are changing, and the law will need to change with it. And so to the extent that the law changes to address these new challenges, we're going to need creative thinkers, creative and strong lawyers. So I think adaptability is an important core aspect for a good lawyer. But also personally, it's important to be able to navigate different spaces and be flexible in that respect as well. So, great question.
Thank you for those questions. And I'll wrap it up with one last kind of comment question, and maybe we can do the lightning round here on it. But we have a few questions about admissions and the admissions process. And I've worked in this for a long time, and my advice is always focus your best on your classes. That's something you can control. Get the highest GPA you can get. And then the LSAT, Michael and Orga, and I think Charlene all mentioned the course. It's an investment in yourself. It's an investment in your future about scholarships. So really, but this is the question. I think Ryan asked about, how do you know at heart that law was right for you? And maybe we can finish it up with this. And I thank you for all of your time. Later today, this video will be on YouTube /FIUDC, and you can always email Eric. But maybe we can lightning round finish it up with Orga. When did you know at heart law was for you, and what final advice would you give students?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I always knew that law was for me, but I think I finally understood it when I realized that law is just it's necessary for pretty much anything you care about in life. And so to the extent that you can understand the law, it just kind of really opens up a whole lot of opportunity for you to understand so much else. And yeah, the final piece of advice I would say is, form strong relationships with your professors. They're very, very helpful. And don't be afraid to reach out and ask anyone for questions. Ask anyone questions. People are generally pretty willing to help.
Yeah, very important law school point. Always ask other lawyers about their experience. They're willing to tell you the story.
Right.
Charlene?
Yeah, so like I said, mentioned before, like I kind of always knew I wanted to go to law school. I didn't know how or when. Like that was just something that I knew existed. But I spoke to a lot of people and I tried to get feedback on it. And so when first year of law school is horrible. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like for me, it was really, really intense, and it was there's a lot of tears shed. But the more you go into law school, the more you get used to it, and the more your brain kind of gets trained to think that like a lawyer, right? So it's going to be okay for those that are in law school. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but like it is tough, and you just have to know that that's something in your heart that you really want to do. And so that's kind of like how I knew eventually, like second or third year of law school, like I was like, okay, they need people like me in this community that think like me and grew up like me to kind of make a difference. And that's how I always think every day when I wake up and like go and work in the federal government. So, and then I guess one thing that I will definitely note is that and I think Anthony mentioned this, like, don't get bogged down by what people say out there in blogs about like, only go to the top Ivy League schools. And, like you're only going to make it if you go into, like this type of clerkship, or that's not the case. Like everyone is so different, and you are going to succeed one way or another. And don't compare yourself and your experiences to others, because everyone makes it and makes a difference in one way, shape, or form, and doesn't have to be like this grandiose like idea of law school. I think all law schools offer such great things. It doesn't have to be a top tier. So, if you do make it, I think kudos, like that's fantastic. Like you're great. But don't get bogged down by that. And when you're doing the LSAT, just like be, like as confident as you can be, work hard for it, and just know that you did the best you could. And once you get there, like if you know in your heart that you did the most you can, then you have done it and you've succeeded.
Awesome advice. I wish I had this about a decade ago. I might have changed my path. And Michael, if you want to end it up, thank you all again. And last word for Mr. Jimenez.
Yeah, so I think if you feel that if you feel law school is calling you and you're okay with the idea of taking on the debt, and you're okay with taking on 3 years or 4 years, then you should pursue it. You should talk to people. This should not be all that you do. Talk to current students, talk to current lawyers, try to get experience in a law firm, like before you make the decision. But I think in my heart, the reason why I knew law was right was I really loved the school. Like I loved the classes. I loved everything I did in law school. That doesn't mean I didn't like it. To Charlene's point, like first year sucks. Like it just sucks. There's nothing. It's just they're trying to like break apart what you learned and like put it back together in a different way, and they do. But if I'm not a lawyer next year, like I'm so happy I went to law school. If like I just love the law, and so I think that was what I really enjoyed law school was, even if I didn't end up being a lawyer, like I wanted to do this, and I was very happy I did this. And as far as like last tips, just take a prep course, and also regional. Law schools are regional. Unless you go to a top 10, 20 law school. Someone who was a lawyer when I was looking at law school told me, like, if you want to stay in California, go to California Law School because that's your network. I didn't listen to them, and I went to Illinois, and I was trying to get back to California, and it was much more difficult because your law schools are regional. People stay in those areas usually. That's where your networks are, and those are the people that are going to help you get jobs. So if you want to end up in DC, I would say try to get to DC. If you want to end up in California, just go to California. If you want to stay in Miami, go to Miami Law School because that's your network.
If you want to stay in Miami, go to FIU. I have to say that. But thank you all for for your time, and all our thanks are not enough for the advice you're giving students. Please watch this video on YouTube, share it with your friends, and join me once again thanking Charlene and Michael and Orga and Eric for putting this together and inviting me to do this. So thank you all. This was a pleasure. And as a part-time student, I have to thank you too, because I know what my colleagues face when they're in class, and you know, the uncertainty and all that anxiety, but I think you gave great advice. I appreciate it. Thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Judge Williams, for joining us and staying till the end. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.